The story began by exploring the concept of ranking, a system that determines a person's status in life. It's also what stirs one's inner desires and drives them to pursue fulfillment. This ranking is reflected in power and intelligence as well as in social connections, wealth, and even the type of work a person performs. In an age like this, everything is evaluated according to a hierarchy of value. In this same era, the journey of a young boy was just beginning, one who stood gazing ahead, wondering what path awaited him in a small quiet village called Tali, where life flowed with simplicity. A boy named Lu was busy chopping wood, his enthusiasm evident in every swing. His face showed satisfaction as he completed the task, revealing that he was 16 years old. At that moment, a villager called out to him, asking if he could sharpen his sword. Liu agreed without hesitation. Suddenly, a girl named Yona stepped in angrily, kicking the man and yelling at him, warning him not to rely on Liu for everything. Yona, also 16, came across as strong-willed and assertive in her actions. Some villagers commented that Liu had always seemed absent-minded since childhood and that he never turned down anyone's request. But Yona didn't stop there. She grabbed Liu and shook him, clearly upset about how others kept taking advantage of him, though Liu didn't appear bothered. Then in a calmer tone, she said she knew Liu was simply too kind, but that didn't make his behavior any less frustrating. Then almost as if a light bulb went off in her mind, Yona smiled brightly. She moved closer to Liu and whispered excitedly, asking if he wanted to leave the village for a bit, saying she had discovered a secret path that no one else knew about. Before they could act on the idea, Yona's grandmother appeared, a stern elderly woman, firmly objecting to them leaving the village, citing long-standing rules that strictly prohibited it. Yona tried to reason with her, but the old woman wouldn't budge, forcefully pulling her granddaughter away while insisting she could never allow such a thing. Then one of the village men stepped in to restrain Yona. The grandmother demanded that Yona be kept under supervision for a while due to her reckless behavior, which left the girl visibly upset and angry. In stark contrast, the same man asked Liu to help fetch water later, and Liu calmly agreed. The man pointed out how different Liu and Yona were even though they were nearly the same age and the only ones of their generation in the village. He then spoke to Liu, suggesting he take a break every now and then. Surely, there were things he wanted to do for himself. But Liu gently declined, insisting on helping, which surprised the man. A memory surfaced in Liu's mind, how the villagers had embraced him after his parents died when he was young, becoming like a true family to him. He remembered how everyone treated him warmly as if he were one of their own. Now more than ever, he understood that they had always gone out of their way to ensure he never felt alone. In return, he had made a quiet decision to repay that kindness with gratitude. Smiling to himself, Liu thought about how much he loved the village and everyone in it. The man touched by Liu's words invited him to move in and live with him starting that very day, but Liu politely declined, explaining that he still lived in the house his parents had left him. In the end, Liu reaffirmed to himself that the people in the village were what mattered most to him. Elsewhere, Yona sat confined inside a wooden cage in the village square, gazing longingly at the world beyond. She called out loudly for her grandmother demanding to be let out, but the old woman simply looked at her with exasperation, lamenting her stubborn nature and wishing she were as calm as Liu. As Yona tried to make sense of why her grandmother was so adamant about keeping them from leaving the village, the older woman responded coldly, saying there was no need. Traders occasionally visited, so there was no reason to take risks. But Yona pushed back, explaining that it wasn't about needs. It was about her longing to explore the vast world beyond, questioning why they had to remain so confined. With a serious tone, her grandmother revealed that someone out there bore a deep grudge against them. Yona was startled by this and immediately asked who that person might be, but the grandmother dismissed her curiosity, saying she didn't need to know the details. That time would eventually take care of everything. Meanwhile, Liu was busy drawing water from the village well, working with quiet focus and steady energy. Once the task was complete, he looked around to ensure everything was in order. Then something unusual caught his eye, and as he turned, he discovered Yona hiding behind him. She gave him a mischievous smile, gesturing for him to stay quiet. Liu was surprised to see her out again, but Yona smiled proudly, saying she had escaped many times before. It wasn't difficult anymore. She eagerly asked him to follow her, though Liu hesitated, remaining silent. As they walked together beyond the village borders, Liu expressed concern that her grandmother would scold them both if she found out, but Yona reassured him it would be fine, especially since they wouldn't be gone for long. She added that she had something special she wanted to show him. They made their way through a lush green forest, Yona moving ahead with excitement while Liu followed with cautious curiosity. When they reached the end of the forest, Yona's excitement grew as she told Liu they were very close to the place she had mentioned. At last, the two emerged into an open space where a vast breathtaking valley stretched out to the horizon. Yona shouted in excitement, pointing toward the awe-inspiring landscape as she marveled at the sheer scale and beauty of the world outside. Liu was visibly moved. This was the time he had ever seen such a sight, and he exclaimed, overwhelmed at how incredible it was. Turning to him with a more serious expression, Yona asked if he knew the rules of the outside world. Her question stirred his curiosity and confusion. Then she pulled out a secret book she had acquired from a trader, explaining that it contained information about a system used in the outside world called the rankings. Yona went on to describe how this system applied to almost everything: adventurers, doctors, even musicians, all of them classified into ranks. Those who achieved these rankings were known as ranked individuals, and the classifications were based on power, food, wealth, and even weapons. She spoke passionately, emphasizing that people in the outside world lived in fierce competition to climb to higher ranks. Liu looked astonished, slowly realizing that the outside world followed a completely different set of rules from what he had known. While Yona declared her dream of becoming a ranked adventurer, she told him she wanted to travel far and wide, face thrilling challenges, meet strong rivals, and eventually become a beloved and respected adventurer. Liu reminded her seriously about the rule that forbade them from leaving the village, but she interrupted him, full of energy, saying she didn't care about that rule anymore. Her mind was made up. Then she extended her hand to him, encouraging him to join her on this journey. With a wide smile and joyful shout, she declared that she wanted them to set off together on their adventure. In that moment, a distant memory surfaced in Yona's mind, an incident from when she was 5 years old when she had been abducted by a giant eagle. The recollection stunned Liu as well, filling him with concern and disbelief as Yona continued to recall that perilous moment from her childhood when at just 5 years old, she was attacked by a massive bird. She remembered how Liu had bravely saved her, confronting the creature with a sudden and mysterious burst of strength. Liu was taken aback by the story and asked if it had really happened. Yona confirmed it eagerly, pointing out that something strange had come out of him at that time. She went on to say that from that moment, she had realized that although Liu usually appeared calm, he became stronger than anyone when he was truly serious. With a smile, she told him he would shine even more if he stepped into the outside world, and she excitedly invited him to join her on adventures across the globe. Liu fell silent for a moment, then thanked Yona gently. However, he told her that despite everything, he loved his village and couldn't bring himself to leave it. Yona was furious at his decision. She began hitting him in frustration, shouting her objections to what she saw as his stubbornness. Declaring that she would go alone, she turned away yelling in anger and disappointment, saying she would no longer care and would continue on her path without looking back. Liu, still seated, called after her to be careful on the way back. As he sat there reflecting, a new thought crept into his mind, something he hadn't considered before. Yona might actually leave the village for good. Alone, he gazed out over the vast horizon, her words about the ranking system in the outside world echoing in his mind. Time passed as he sat lost in thought, and the setting sun began to paint the sky with warm hues. Eventually, as evening approached, he decided to return to the village. On his way back, something strange in the sky caught his attention. He turned, puzzled, and was stunned to see a massive object hovering above him, ominous and unfamiliar in appearance. From this object, a beam of intense light and energy burst so powerful that it knocked Liu off balance. He tried to make sense of what was happening, but the mysterious object suddenly vanished at a startling speed, overcome with fear and anxiety about what he had seen. He immediately ran back, desperate to check on Yona, her grandmother, and the other villagers. As he ran, he tried to convince himself that everything would be alright, that the village and its people were safe. But when he arrived at the place where the village should have been, terror gripped him. It was gone. In its place lay only a massive crater. He stood frozen, stunned, staring in horror at the empty void where the village had once stood. Words escaped him, and he began muttering in fear and disbelief, trying to comprehend what had happened. Then panic taking hold, he ran, crying out the names of Yona, her grandmother, and anyone else who might still be alive, but no voice answered his cries. In his moment of collapse and despair, an image of Yona appeared in his mind, her younger self smiling as she once told him, "It's okay, Liu. I'll always be by your side. You're never alone." Liu was drowning in painful memories, recalling the words of the villagers who once told him he was not alone, that from that day on, they had become his family. He screamed in agony and heartbreak, kneeling before the devastation that had befallen his village. With an expression of shock and disbelief, he bitterly wondered why something like this had happened to his village and his people. Liu wept as he blamed himself with deep regret for doing nothing but watch and for being too late to act once again. Then struggling to his feet, he stared at the horrifying scene until another person appeared in the very place where nothing remained but barren land. Suddenly, this stranger approached him, stood beside him, and looked at him in silence. He asked in a calm tone if Liu was one of the survivors from the village of Tali. Liu replied in a low sorrowful voice, "Yes." The man expressed his sympathy for Liu and the pain he was enduring, then informed him that the island which had appeared had now vanished, leaving Liu surprised and questioning island. Liu wondered about the true nature of the mysterious thing that had appeared and disappeared moments earlier, and he burst out in anger and tears asking about the fate of his villagers and what had happened to them. The man responded in a serious firm tone, telling him that he had to let go of the idea of the village entirely, then handed him a small piece of paper with a place written on it, a place he should go if he wanted to live safely. Liu became furious, grabbing the man violently and demanding a clear answer. But the man shouted back sharply that the village had disappeared completely and that this world was not a place for a boy like him to interfere in its affairs. Then with gravity, he told Liu that he had to forget everything that had happened, for this was the only option left to him. He also thought to himself that he shouldn't look into the matter any further for fear that he might become the next victim. But Liu, deep inside, refused to give in to the idea of surrender and the echo of Yona's words that she once said to him, "Liu, you're stronger than anyone when you get serious." 23. Returned to his mind. In that moment, he felt a strange power begin to surge within him. And with anger and determination, he decided that he would never forget what happened, vowing to go to that island and bring back all the villagers no matter what it took. Liu's thoughts wandered back to his childhood memories when he lost his parents in a landslide. That happened when he was very young. He bitterly remembered the moments he lived through after that tragedy when he found himself alone, but the village and its people were the ones who took him in and cared for him as if he were a member of their own family, and he never felt alone thanks to them. Liu began to recall his memories of Yona, remembering how she was always by his side, carrying bouquets of flowers and smiling at him with innocent brightness. Memories of the villagers he had lived with flooded his mind, how they were a group of kind-hearted people who could never stand by without helping someone in pain or need. In a decisive moment of resolve, Liu was certain that it was impossible for him to forget these people, and the mysterious energy known as prana began to surge from him with great force. Determination was clear on Liu's face as he declared inwardly that he would go to that island no matter the cost and that he would bring back everyone he had lost from his village. The mysterious man whom Liu had met was stunned by the sheer amount of energy radiating from Liu, and he wondered in shock about the enormous amount of prana he was witnessing. Strange visions appeared before the man as he noticed that the space around Liu was starting to warp and change due to the power surrounding him. At that moment, Liu remembered the definition of prana he had once read in a book. It is the mental energy possessed by all living creatures. He also recalled that according to what he had read, everyone possesses this energy, but only a few people have the ability to use it consciously. Among those who are especially gifted, they are able to wield this energy intentionally and powerfully. Normally, prana is invisible and colorless, but those with strong prana can make it visible and extremely clear. Liu also remembered that some races possess their own unique and different kind of prana. He recalled the image of his fellow villagers and wondered within himself if the village possessed a special type of prana, which might have made it a target for destruction. The stranger silently noticed with concern that Liu was one of the survivors from a place called Babel and had intended to protect him, but now saw that Liu possessed the ability to free himself soon without his help. Still, the man spoke to himself regretfully, saying that Liu had no idea how dangerous his situation truly was nor the reasons driving the man to protect him. At that moment, the man drove his sword forcefully into the ground before him, silently declaring his firm decision and readiness for confrontation. He turned to Liu and told him that if he truly wanted to go to that island, he had to take up the sword and prove his strength. The man added seriously that if he could see enough potential in Liu, he would personally take on his training. He drew his sword, glowing red, and challenged Liu to attack him seriously as if he intended to kill him. A fierce confrontation began between the two with Liu standing ready in his mighty green energy facing the man who was surrounded by a red prana aura. Liu charged toward the man in a powerful attack, fueled by his unique prana and determined to fight. During the fight, the man noticed that Liu's sword skills were weak, but the strength and pressure behind his attacks were astonishing and extraordinary. Despite Liu's lack of skill with the sword, the pressure he put on the man was overwhelming and unexpected. At the moment their swords collided, the two exchanged sharp glances that reflected the seriousness and strength of each in this confrontation. A great wave of prana surged from around Liu, astonishing the man and increasing his wonder and amazement. At that moment, the man realized that Liu was truly exceptional and inwardly remarked in awe that this boy was the real one. Liu surged forward with even greater force, his face showing intense determination and anger, continuing to press with all his might. After the confrontation ended, the man sat calmly with Liu and told him that the island, because of which the village had disappeared, was called Sky Island. The man explained that this island usually floats above the ocean, but on rare occasions it appears suddenly in random places, destroying everything around it. He went on to express his regret and sorrow that he had tried many times to stop the island but had failed to prevent it again. The man concluded his conversation with Liu by telling him that there is a theory stating that humans who are surrounded by the light of that strange island are transported directly to Sky Island. Liu began to wonder what would happen if he touched the strange light the man had mentioned. The man replied calmly, explaining that it was just a theory, and even if he survived, no one knew what might happen to him afterward. Liu asked what he should do in this situation, and the man told him that there was a direct and clear way to achieve his goal. The man explained that the direct way was to be among the top 10 in the adventurer's ranking. With a serious and profound look, he told Liu that he must be in the top 10 of this ranking in order to reach the island. Liu asked about the nature of this adventurer ranking. The man explained to Liu that adventurers are professional individuals whose primary job is to explore and develop undiscovered lands and regions. He continued saying that adventurers make up the largest group among the various classifications and that those who hold the top 10 positions among them are considered monsters in terms of strength. The man clarified to Liu that if he managed to reach the top 10 among the adventurers, then he would be able to go to Sky Island. He added with a warning tone that ever since the island appeared, it has held the top spot in the danger zone's ranking and that adventurers who go there rarely return alive. After this explanation, he asked Liu if he still wanted to go there, and Liu answered with unwavering resolve that he would. The man looked deeply at Liu, contemplating his determined answer. After a moment of silence, the man told Liu that he would train him for only 1 year starting from that moment, but emphasized that he would only teach him how to use the sword. He then offered that Liu should use him just as a step during that year of training, after which he would have to rely on himself to climb to the top of the adventurer ranking. The man introduced himself as Adel, the number 1 ranked knight and the strongest knight among humans. Adel asked the boy his name, and the boy simply answered, Liu. Then Adel shook Liu's hand and told him seriously that he would never go easy on him during training. He smiled as he told Liu that he was the person he'd ever seen manage to hit him that hard on the very try. Liu looked at Adel with a steady gaze, ready for whatever was to come. Thus began the year of training, which Liu himself would later describe as a year of hell. Liu trained with extreme intensity throughout the year, and his hands and feet were covered with wounds and blisters from the harsh training. Liu also faced extremely dangerous and brutal situations as his muscles tore and his bones broke during training. The pain and hardship Liu faced became so frequent that blood would flow from his body constantly due to the severity of the training. After all that suffering, Adel stopped speaking entirely about Sky Island as if to tell Liu indirectly, find the rest of the answers yourself, and if that's impossible, then give up. Liu continued to fight and endure these hardships, believing deep inside that his villagers were still alive, and this faith was the only thing that kept him moving forward. Many questions continued to haunt him. He was always wondering about the reason behind his villagers' disappearance and the true nature of the mysterious Sky Island. Liu pressed on carrying his sword, assuring himself that he would climb the ranks of the adventurers until he discovered the whole truth. With fierce determination, Liu reaffirmed to himself that he would reach the top of the adventurer ranking to uncover the truth behind everything that had happened. And so a whole year passed since the beginning of the training, and Liu stood beside his teacher, Adel, as they gazed at the beautiful view from the top of the hill. Adel asked him, as he looked toward the horizon, if he was ready for the next journey. Liu replied with confidence and calm that he had been ready for a long time. Liu stared ahead in deep calm, recalling Yona's words when she told him that she wanted to become a ranked adventurer and invited him to join her on the adventure she had always dreamed of. He also remembered the moment when Yona, who had always dreamed of the outside world, disappeared and realized that now he was the one about to embark on the journey she had longed for so much. Liu made an inner decision to carry Yona's dream and fulfill it in her place. At that moment, Adel called out to him, saying that it was time to begin the journey, inviting him to move forward. Liu responded calmly and confidently, assuring him he was ready to set off. After a year of grueling training, it was clear that Liu had changed greatly. He was now 17 years old and much taller due to the growth he had undergone. Now Liu was fully prepared to begin his journey towards Sky Island as the disciple of the strongest knight humanity had ever known. His journey began from the kingdom of Balta, specifically from his village of Tuli, heading toward the royal capital, Triquista. In the royal capital Triquista, there was an institution called the Recognition Office, which managed and updated the adventurer rankings in one of the offices of the Recognition Office. A girl was asleep atop a pile of scattered books and papers, mumbling in her sleep that it was time. The girl woke up suddenly in a panic, realizing she had overslept and missed some important tasks. She met her colleague who asked if she'd stayed up all night looking at the ranking lists. The girl defended herself, saying it was part of her job since she worked at the Recognition Office. Her colleague advised her to take better care of her health, given her important job that required her to evaluate many people on a constant basis. It was explained that the Recognition Office was a profession that sent expert specialists to different places in the world to assess the skills of adventurers and rank them fairly, and that employees at the Recognition Office needed to have extensive knowledge and high ability in judgment and decision-making. Furthermore, reaching a position that allows a person to evaluate and rank others required passing many evaluations and tests. Thus, this job was considered one of the most difficult professions, and not just anyone could do it. Only a select few were chosen for it. The girl admitted to her colleague with a smile that she was currently just a junior employee and that to achieve her ambitions she would have to put in great effort to earn a promotion. When her colleague asked her what she wanted to achieve, the girl laughed shyly, saying she wanted to do many different things. Her colleague suggested that the best way to get promoted within the recognition office was to become the exclusive agent of a distinguished adventurer, but the girl replied sadly that she had yet to find anyone worth her attention. Her colleague laughed, pointing out that her standards were too high, but the girl replied sharply that the problem was not with her standards but with the current adventurer's low level. The girl explained passionately that in the past, competition among adventurers was fierce, but now the top positions had become stagnant and unchanging, which had taken away the value of the rankings. She affirmed strongly that rankings only have value when they are constantly changing and evolving. Her colleague smiled teasingly, telling her that she was far too obsessed with evaluations and rankings, and the girl laughed heartily, proudly admitting that she was indeed a hopeless case in that regard. The girl who worked at the recognition office began to speak passionately about her wish for a new star to emerge who could turn the rankings upside down. Her colleague laughed as she opened the door to a hall filled with people, saying that this rising star might already be inside this very hall. The hall was indeed crowded with participants preparing to take the adventurer registration exam. The girl from the recognition office wondered why there were so many attendees this year, and her colleague replied that the number was usually much lower. She added that the increase in numbers might be due to the addition of Azaban Forest to the Danger Zone's ranking 2 months ago, which increased the interest among adventurers. After looking closely at the participants, her colleague remarked that there were many promising applicants this year. She began to explain about one of the attendees, Old Darkies, ranked 753 among mercenaries, a young leader of a famous mercenary group known even on the national level. Then she pointed to another young man named Eddie Markman, ranked 402 among archers from a well-known family famous for excellence in this field, noting that his speed in shooting arrows is expected to break the record in the future. She continued mentioning that there were other distinguished individuals in various specialties, such as the adventurer merchant and others. The girl from the recognition office noticed several other figures, such as the knight, the navigator, and the adventurer guide, and was able to easily identify their rankings. Her colleague praised her for being able to recognize the rankings without even looking at the records, to which the girl replied proudly that she could do it easily because she worked at the recognition office. The girl from the recognition office explained enthusiastically why so many people wanted to earn the adventurer title. It was extremely useful and necessary for entering certain special and dangerous areas. During their conversation, another colleague interrupted, asking her to wait a bit because the registration procedures were starting. Liu entered the place to register and was warmly welcomed by the receptionist, who told him he had been directed here to register in the rankings. The receptionist explained the registration system, saying that it is managed by the recognition office and rankings can be updated anywhere with an office representative present, while time registration must be done at the office itself. Liu told the receptionist he wanted to register as an adventurer. She smiled and told him his timing was perfect because the exam was about to begin and offered to let him participate right away. Liu agreed, filled out the registration form, and was informed by the receptionist that the exam fee was 3,000 delt. Liu completed his registration procedures. The receptionist thanked him, asked him to wait in a neighboring room, and gave him his test number, which was 53. The employee from the recognition office noticed Liu passing by and commented in surprise that there were still people who didn't know the role of the recognition office. Her colleague laughed, saying it had been a long time since she'd last explained it to someone. Her colleague asked for her help with preparing the exam, and she agreed, joking that working inside sometimes could actually be nice. The receptionist began to explain the details of the adventurer registration exam, clarifying that it would be held in 3 stages. She went on to explain that the stage would be a written exam followed by a practical stage and then a final test that would be explained later. She advised the participants not to give up if they didn't do well in one stage, as they could still succeed if they excelled in the others. The participants began the written exam immediately, and some of them showed clear tension and deep concentration. One of the participants thought to himself that the exam was extremely difficult and very broad in scope. After a little while, the receptionist announced the end of the written exam. She then explained to everyone that the practical exam would take place in the forest outside the village in 2 hours and asked them to remain in place until the results appeared. In the neighboring room, the receptionist asked her colleague to help correct the exams, and the latter responded enthusiastically, confirming she was ready. Inside the office room, the 2 employees were busy grading the registration exam papers. While checking the papers, the girl noticed the sheet belonging to candidate number 53, Liu, and immediately remembered him as the one with the sad look she had met earlier. But her expression quickly changed from curiosity to utter shock when she discovered that all of Lu's answers on the exam were completely wrong. With frustration, the young employee sighed and said that they should consider the feelings of people who suddenly find themselves in such a difficult test. After 2 hours, the contestants gathered in the forest area for the practical exam, where the employee explained that their task was to find specific treasures. She explained the rules in detail, pointing to a large board displaying the point values for each required item, and strictly forbade any fighting between participants, making it clear that whoever touched an item would claim it. The contestants began boasting about their abilities and skills. Some claimed expertise in medicinal herbs, while others said they were great at collecting insects. The employee started the practical exam, and the participants dashed quickly into the forest. The employee breathed a sigh of relief once everyone had left, saying she could finally relax for a while. She asked her colleague how many she expected to pass this time, and her colleague replied that about half of them might succeed. As the participants moved skillfully and lightly through the forest, the employee asked her colleague if there were any notable individuals this time, but she replied sadly that she hadn't noticed anyone special yet. At that moment, Aldacus appeared, being the to reach the meeting point, and asked if he was the to finish the task. Aldacus presented a piece of precious regal ore, which earned him 120 points in the exam. The employee asked him if he was sure he wanted to finish the exam now, and he replied indifferently that he would pass anyway. She tried to explain that collecting more points could give him a better ranking upon registration, but he didn't seem interested, saying his main job was as a mercenary, and he didn't care much for the adventurer ranking. Meanwhile, Eddie Markman arrived quickly, carrying a rare bird feather worth 180 points, surprised that someone had arrived before him. Aldacus mocked Eddie for bragging about a bird feather, but Eddie replied confidently, explaining that the feather belonged to a bird capable of flying silently at 500 km per hour. The two exchanged sharp challenges. While the employee laughed and commented that the ranking system gave people a lot of pride, and her colleague confirmed that this was part of the participants' strength. Suddenly, everyone was drawn to the sound of footsteps approaching. The crowd was astonished when they saw Liu emerging from the forest, dragging behind him the body of a massive bear. Liu approached them and said coolly that he didn't know how to extract the red bear's gallbladder, so he brought the whole corpse and wondered if he could submit it that way. The employee stammered a bit and told him that it was actually acceptable despite how strange it was. Liu was awarded 300 points, and everyone was amazed at his ability to kill a red bear by himself. The girl asked in surprise how he was able to identify such a rare animal despite failing the written exam so badly, and he simply replied that those bears frequently appeared near his village. The girl was puzzled by Lu's attitude, and another participant wondered aloud to his friend if he had really witnessed the fight and how Lu had managed to bring the bear in that way. He was extremely nervous and said he saw what happened right before his eyes, but he quickly backtracked and insisted he couldn't say he'd seen it clearly as it all happened far too quickly. He recalled the moment when Liu drew his sword at incredible speed to face the giant red bear that suddenly attacked him. In a split, Liu managed to defeat the red bear with a single strike, leaving everyone in shock. Meanwhile, the employee from the recognition office was observing Liu with a thoughtful, silent gaze filled with astonishment. An hour later, the participants gathered in an underground training area for the final stage of the exam. The responsible employee began explaining what adventurers needed to be cautious of, saying that the greatest danger didn't just come from monsters, but from humans as well. She went on to say that the adventurer's mission is to explore new lands, which are often dangerous and uncharted. She added that such journeys expose adventurers to the risks of pirates and bandits, so strength is essential to face these threats. Accordingly, she announced that the final exam would be a training battle between the participants. She assured them that this test was only meant to evaluate their individual abilities and that there was no need to worry about winning or losing. During this, one of the burly participants approached Ole Darkis and challenged him to a fight. The man started mocking Ole, saying he only brought a rock during the previous practical exam, and he scoffed at the entire mercenary ranking. The big man grew furious and attacked Ole with tremendous force, insisting he wouldn't allow his status to be insulted. But Ole easily knocked down the large man with a single blow, leaving everyone in awe. Ole immediately apologized to the employee for losing his temper, and she told him it was fine since the defeated participant was already going to be eliminated. The other participants commented in astonishment about Ole's strength, saying that anyone who tried to challenge someone ranked was surely a fool. The employee began to wonder who would be Ole's opponent, nervously asking herself. The junior recognition office employee approached her colleague and told her she wanted to pick a specific opponent for Ole, and her colleague agreed with curiosity. The battles between the participants began, and the confrontations were fierce with a variety of fighting styles on display. It was time for the match, and the employee announced that the next bout would be between the team of Old Darkies, number 27, and Eddie Markman, number 41, who would face off against participant number 53, Lu, by himself. Everyone was surprised by the decision and considered it an underestimation of the two. While Eddie said it wasn't the time he'd been underestimated, the employee nervously asked her colleague if she was sure about her choice, and her colleague replied confidently, confirming she had made the right decision. The eyes of the junior recognition office employee shone with intense excitement as she thought to herself that if her eyes hadn't deceived her, Lu was not just an ordinary participant, but a monster in every sense of the word. The match then began in the large arena with all those present watching in eager anticipation. As the exam participants prepared for battle, the two recognition office employees watched the scene intently, their eyes fixed on the arena. On the other side, Lu stood firmly and confidently, facing his two opponents without showing any fear or hesitation. Meanwhile, All Darkies, the leader of the Red Wolf mercenary group, stood ready to fight alongside his partner, Eddie Markman, the young man from a renowned family of archers. The achievements of the mercenary group led by All Darkies were recalled, including their defeat last year of a major criminal gang known as the Canmore Mafia, which had held the 60th spot in the criminal organization's ranking. It was also mentioned that All himself had single-handedly eliminated 7 of the top leaders of that gang, including the boss. As for Eddie Markman, he was the heir of the Markman archery family and possessed an extraordinary talent with the bow and arrow. From a very young age, Eddie received exceptional training from his father, who had previously held place in the archers' ranking. Eddie's skills were widely known among archers, and no one doubted his brilliance and accuracy. In this difficult match, Lu, the young man whom no one knew, stood alone against these two well-known fighters. With great excitement, the employee announced the start of the battle, and each competitor rushed toward their opponent. Eddie was the to attack, firing a fast arrow at Liu, but Lu skillfully dodged it. He then quickly moved toward Aldarcus, preparing to face him head-on. A fast and intense clash erupted between Lu and All, with both trying to land decisive blows on each other. The two exchanged fierce and rapid attacks, and the sound of their swords clashing echoed loudly, astounding the audience. The spectators were amazed by the speed and intensity of the battle, which was so fast they could barely see what was happening. One viewer even commented in astonishment that he could only hear the sound of swords clashing, but couldn't make out what was actually going on before his eyes. In a sudden moment, Liu launched a sharp attack that forced All to step back, surprised by his opponent's strength. He seized the opportunity and tried to end the fight with a direct blow, but All managed to dodge the attack at the last. At that moment, Eddie took advantage and launched a rapid assault, firing multiple arrows at Liu from an elevated position. But Liu demonstrated extraordinary skill, blocking all the arrows at incredible speed, which left the audience completely stunned. The onlookers were more and more astonished as they watched Liu face the attacks of two of the most skilled fighters with such ease. The fighters paused briefly to assess the situation, and Liu observed his opponents with calm and steady eyes. All and Eddie exchanged a short conversation, with All saying he was certain Liu was a swordsman of a very high rank and Eddie affirming that he had never seen a fighter like him before. For the time during the match, Liu spoke, calmly asking if they held any other rankings. Eddie replied that he was ranked 402 among archers, and All said he was ranked 753 among mercenaries. Liu responded in a calm, confident tone, saying that now he understood everything clearly. A mysterious and extremely powerful energy began to surround Liu, and he declared with great confidence that if he could defeat them both, he would be able to rise to the top 3 positions in the ranking. The immense energy radiated from him, making everyone feel its overwhelming power and magnitude. Eddie was completely stunned by the powerful energy surrounding Liu, clear signs of shock and amazement appearing on his face. All too was shocked and frightened, wondering to himself how this person could suddenly possess such a terrifying aura. The employee from the recognition office looked on in astonishment, shocked by the immense prana radiating from Liu as the energy became clearly visible to the naked eye. Immediately, Eddie Markman aimed his bow at Liu, saying in a firm tone that ranking wasn't just about profession. Eddie went on to say that while he was ranked 402 among archers, he also held the 70th place in the ranking of specialized marksmen. Eddie fired his arrow at incredible speed, aiming directly at Liu with the intent to take him down. But in a split second, Liu dodged the arrow and closed in on Eddie, knocking him to the ground with a single blow and rendering him completely unconscious. Liu then stood facing All Darkies, who quickly readied himself after seeing his companion Eddie fall. All looked at Liu with concern and a questioning gaze about his strange power, obvious signs of anxiety showing as he faced such terrifying strength. The two faced off in a decisive stance for the final confrontation amid tense anticipation from the audience. They exchanged sharp and determined glances. It was clear from the fierce look in Liu's eyes just how powerful and intimidating he was, while All appeared stunned by what he was seeing. Liu charged forward at incredible speed, passing by All and delivering a swift blow that nearly took him down. At the last moment, the employee called out to All in a loud voice, urging Liu to wait. After Liu stopped, all announced his surrender, dropping his weapon to the ground and explaining that he needed to get to work later and couldn't risk getting injured. All added that it would be bad for him if he lost consciousness like Eddie, who was still lying unconscious on the ground. Liu turned coldly toward all, who stood defenseless and surrendered, and Liu seemed to be silently analyzing his opponent's situation. All glanced at Liu's hand as it moved slightly, thinking anxiously to himself that he finally understood what was happening. All continued his thoughts in clear amazement, wondering about the true identity of this boy, who possessed such frightening power, considering him a real monster. At the same time, the spectators expressed their admiration and utter astonishment at Liu's strength, having defeated 2 triple-ranked fighters all by himself. The recognition office employee announced in a clear loud voice, the end of the match and the winner, contestant number 53, Liu. Suddenly, the junior employee from the recognition office rushed off, ignoring her colleague's call, who was left wondering where she was hurrying off to. She quickly reached a room full of advanced equipment and computers and eagerly began searching the exclusive recognition office database. At last, the employee found Liu's data, which showed his full name as Liu Toli, age 17, but with no prior registration or ranking experience. The employee was deeply surprised that someone with such exceptional skills had no previous knowledge about the recognition office, and she concluded he must be from a very remote area. She also confirmed there was no criminal record or affiliations with any special groups, which only increased her amazement and excitement. A huge smile and overwhelming joy spread across the junior employee's face as she realized she discovered a true treasure, exclaiming to herself with great excitement, "Where has this hidden talent been all this time?" She hurried out of the room, rushing toward Liu's location, shouting loudly and clearly, "Liu Toli." Finally, the junior employee entered the area where Liu stood, declaring clearly and enthusiastically, asking him to make her his exclusive agent at the recognition office. When the junior employee from the recognition office arrived at the scene calling out loudly for Liu to make her his exclusive agent, she was shocked to find a large crowd surrounding Liu with everyone making the same request of him. The junior employee was stunned by the scene, feeling deeply frustrated that she was just one step too late as the others had already made their offers to Liu before her. She grew angry at the others' haste in presenting their offers, believing they should have properly checked Liu's identity before making any such proposals. On the other side, Liu looked a little confused and innocently asked what it meant to have an exclusive agent. Immediately, the junior employee jumped in with great enthusiasm, assuring Liu that she would explain everything to him in detail. She began a thorough explanation, saying that an exclusive agent is a person appointed specifically to oversee and regularly update the ranking of the person they represent. The employee clarified that the usual way to update a ranking was to wait for someone from the recognition office to formally assess a person's skills. But with an exclusive agent, the adventurer could update their ranking instantly, anytime and anywhere without waiting. She continued her explanation passionately, pointing out that this was especially valuable for adventurers who traveled frequently around the world. The junior employee then reached into her pocket and pulled out a special device called a rank tell, explaining that it was a unique and exclusive tool for agents that allowed them to update rankings at any time. She finished her explanation with a smile, holding out the device to Liu and noting that if he wanted to climb the rankings quickly and efficiently, he needed to hire an exclusive agent like her. Liu paused for a moment, considering the matter seriously, then told her in a calm tone that he had only one condition. Liu looked around at everyone and stated clearly that he would agree to hire whichever exclusive agent could help him reach the top 10 in the adventurer rankings. A moment of surprise and silence spread among the onlookers after Liu's unexpected demand, as it seemed like an extremely difficult challenge to them. Everyone stared at Liu with intense focus as he repeated his request with seriousness and calm, confirming that he wanted someone who could guarantee he would reach the top 10 of the rankings. The silence returned and people began to murmur among themselves, commenting that the top 10 were filled with people of exceptional strength. Some in the crowd expressed concern about Liu's request, pointing out that even with his remarkable skills, reaching the top 10 was nearly impossible. Despite that, Liu remained silent, offering no further comment, and kept looking ahead with clear confidence and determination. At that moment, the junior employee noticed Liu quietly walking away without choosing anyone. She rushed after him, shouting and calling out loudly for him to stop and wait. The employee quickly left the area. She hurried to catch up with Liu, who was walking away toward the exit of the building. When she finally managed to catch up, she called out his name loudly, asking him to stop. Breathless, she stopped in front of him and asked very seriously why he was so determined to enter the top 10 of the adventurer rankings. Liu replied calmly and clearly, saying that it was none of her business and that it was something that concerned him alone. But the junior employee insisted, answering with great confidence and clear determination that she would make it her business and that she would do everything she could to help him no matter the reason. She turned to Liu, declaring with great enthusiasm and clear determination that she would be his exclusive agent and would lead him to reach the top 10 in the adventurer rankings. But Liu replied calmly that he did not want to put a child in danger, which surprised the employee, who responded angrily and incredulously, asking if he was really calling her a child. The employee continued, speaking emotionally as she clarified that before being a child, she was a certified agent at the recognition office, and she also pointed out that Liu himself was nothing but a child. Liu answered her decisively and firmly, explaining that even if she wasn't a child, he had no intention of hiring anyone. He went on speaking quietly while gazing at the horizon, saying that he did not want to drag others into what he was doing. But the employee did not give up, responding with even greater confidence, insisting that there was something she had to do no matter what it took. She continued with even more passion, telling Liu that she had a strong reason for risking her life and that this was precisely why she wanted to work with him and form an alliance. The two of them stood facing each other in silence, overlooking the city, and Liu listened to her words with clear attention. The junior employee revealed her main reason, announcing with confidence and courage that she had a purpose and a mission she wanted to accomplish no matter what happened. At that moment, Liu remembered his own goal for coming here and the promise he made a year ago. After hearing this, Liu replied very quietly, looking her straight in the eyes, saying that he too had something he had to do no matter the cost. The two stood face to face in a direct confrontation while the city around them was bathed in golden sunlight. The employee eagerly reached out her hand to Liu, telling him with confidence that she would make him one of the highest-ranked individuals, and mistakenly called him immediate. Liu calmly and steadily corrected her, telling her his real name was Liu Toli. Finally, the two shook hands with the sunset in the background, marking the moment of the official beginning of their alliance. The scene shifted to a house the junior employee had rented, where she welcomed Liu warmly, excitedly asking if he liked the place. The employee explained enthusiastically that she had only rented the place for a few days and asked Liu to use it as his temporary base. Liu thanked her politely for her efforts, describing her as very capable, but she responded with obvious embarrassment, saying it wasn't that important. Then Liu expressed his hesitation about accepting her services permanently, suggesting instead a trial period of 1 week, which made her a little angry and surprised. Emilia replied forcefully and passionately, assuring him that she would prove her full competence within just 1 week, and she even imitated his manner of speaking mockingly. Liu smiled quietly and simply commented that he hoped so, which annoyed the employee, who told him not to speak as if it didn't concern him. Emilia paused to think, then sarcastically remarked that despite Liu's great strength and serious fighting, he seemed oddly absent-minded and indifferent in his daily life. Liu replied that he heard that comment a lot. Suddenly, the exam results appeared, and the employee took out the rank tell device, excitedly announcing to Liu that his results had come out. The final result revealed that Liu Toli's initial ranking as an adventurer was number 27,281, which made the media happy with the result, assuring him that it was an excellent starting position. But Liu looked somewhat surprised and told the employee that he had expected his ranking to be within 3 digits only, which made her very puzzled and caused her to ask why. Liu explained why he believed he should be ranked within the top 3 digits, saying he assumed so because the 2 individuals he had faced in the exam were already highly ranked. Eddie was ranked 402 among archers, and All was ranked 753 among mercenaries. The media clarified that the adventurer ranking was the most competitive compared to all other classifications, which made it extremely difficult to reach high positions easily, and she emphasized that it wasn't just about strength. She then showed Liu the details of his rankings on the rank tell device, pointing out that although his rank as an adventurer was 27,281, his position among swordsmen was 58, an exceptionally high rank. Liu expressed his surprise and asked if that ranking was considered good. The employee affirmed clearly that this number represented the peak of talent according to the recognition office. Liu then asked whether All and Eddie had other rankings as well. The media confirmed this and displayed their various classifications. She reviewed all Darker's rankings, which included mercenaries at 753, swordsmen at 521, special cleaning at 209, investigators at 2,831, and trusted leader at rank 86. She also listed Eddie Markman's rankings, which included archers at 402, marksmen at 781, scouts at 2,111, and an impressively high rank of 19 in mushroom cultivation. The media explained that having multiple rankings was possible, but added that it increased the workload and responsibilities. And she wondered if Liu intended to register for more rankings as well. But Liu replied immediately and firmly that he wasn't looking for more work, and the employee smiled, saying she was beginning to understand his personality a little. The employee continued summarizing his main goal, stating clearly that he wanted to reach the top 10 of the adventurer rankings in the fastest and shortest way possible. Then she pointed upward excitedly, saying she suspected his ultimate goal was to reach Sky Island. Lu continued listening to her silently and seriously without denying anything she said. He asked in surprise how she knew about that, and she explained that this privilege to access the island was only granted to those who reached the top 10 in the rankings. The media then asked if he would tell her his reason for wanting to go to the island after the trial period between them ended, and Liu calmly agreed to her request. She responded that she would also share her own circumstances once the trial period ended. She added that it was only fair they exchanged details, although she clarified that her situation was a bit complicated and difficult to explain to someone newly entering the world of rankings. A serious and mysterious expression appeared on her face as she quietly said that what she was chasing was the darkness of the rankings, hinting that the matter involved some kind of secret or great danger. When Liu asked what she had just said, she quickly brushed it off with a smile, saying it was nothing important. She swiftly changed the subject and asked where he got his immense strength from, especially his impressive sword skills. Liu replied simply that he had become the disciple of a knight named Adol a year ago, which made her scream in shock upon hearing the name. She grabbed him in disbelief, asking if he meant Adol, the #1 ranked knight known as the strongest knight of humanity, to which Liu casually replied that Adol had mentioned something like that. The employee was astonished by Liu's calm reaction, and she explained how famous Adol was, noting that he had never trained anyone before and how rumors claimed he had been planning to choose a successor from among the young knights. The media was still overwhelmed by the fact that Liu had become Adol's successor, and she trembled as she said that the other knights would faint if they ever found out. Liu then asked quietly and simply whether Adol was really that amazing, and the employee responded with great excitement, affirming that he was the #1 knight and the strongest in the entire world. But Liu casually remarked that he had managed to hit Adol with his sword, which caused the employee to scream in utter disbelief, insisting that such a thing was impossible. She kept staring at Liu in shock, wondering aloud how he had been raised to become such a strange person who just says whatever comes to mind. In the end, she grabbed her device and reviewed Liu's data once more, confirming to herself that he was a completely new name in the database, and she began thinking seriously about it again. The scene began with Liu recalling an old conversation with Adol when he had asked him about the meaning of a title or family name and realized at the time that the concept was unfamiliar to him. Adol had told him then that he should use the name Liu Toli if he truly wanted to reach Sky Island through the shortest path, warning that while it might bring great risks, it could also provide him with some important clues. Liu gave the matter some thought and told him he understood and would use that name. The scene returned to the present where the employee was curiously asking Liu if Toli was just an alias, but Liu responded firmly confirming that it was not a fake name. He then continued in a calm and confident tone saying that Toli was his family name and it meant a lot to him. A warm smile appeared on Amedia's face as she thanked him for clarifying. She then suggested they take a break and told Liu her duties as an agent were done for the day. The media began to remove her hat, saying she would feel more relaxed once it was off. Liu was surprised when he saw her and said in astonishment that he hadn't expected this. Then clearly flustered, he awkwardly asked if she was really a girl, something he hadn't realized until now. The employee shouted angrily and with deep embarrassment, asking if he had only just figured that out, to which Liu calmly replied, "Sorry." The employee looked extremely annoyed by Liu's calmness, glaring at him in frustration and anger. She then yelled in exasperation, wondering aloud if sorry was really all he could say after such a shocking revelation. The next morning began with a peaceful scene of the city and its bustling streets. The media was sitting in the room reading the newspaper, looking calm and focused. Liu appeared coming down from the upper floor and the employee greeted him with a smile, saying he had woken up early. Liu muttered that he was just going to get some water. As he got closer and saw her clearly, he hesitated a bit and quietly said it was nothing important. They exchanged morning greetings kindly and then Amelia suggested they go have breakfast together. She put her hat back on, saying the road ahead would be long, but today marked the step of their long journey. She spoke with great enthusiasm, declaring that it was time for a strategic meeting to discuss how Liu could enter the top 10 in the adventurer rankings. The scene shifted to a modest restaurant in the city, where Amelia explained to Liu that the main way to raise an adventurer's rank was through exploratory or developmental achievements in new lands. She clarified that these missions could be voluntary, but advised him to start by completing official missions. Liu agreed and listened attentively as he ate his breakfast, while she explained that many people needed the strength of adventurers to gather resources or investigate various matters. She added with a smile as she pulled out the rank tell device that with her around, he could get access to these missions easily using the device. Liu commented that it was indeed a useful tool, and the employee smiled and told him he could use it freely if he agreed to appoint her as his exclusive agent. Liu replied that he'd think about it. As they continued eating together, Liu asked with interest whether there were any missions that could quickly raise his ranking. She responded that he simply needed to choose missions with a high difficulty level as those had the greatest impact on rankings. Liu immediately decided to choose the hardest mission from the list, a task involving the retrieval of a hidden treasure inside the submerged Takama Temple, a dangerous area ranked on the danger zones list. But Amidia shouted in strong objection to his choice, insisting that the mission was impossible for him at this stage, expressing deep concern over how difficult it truly was. Despite her strong protest, Liu stood firm on his decision and told her that he wouldn't know his limits unless he tried. Still, the media reiterated that this mission was beyond his capabilities and that he might die before even getting the chance to raise his rank, pleading with him to trust her judgment as a certified agent. Liu looked at her with unwavering determination and asked her to let him try, justifying his decision by stating that Sky Island held the #1 spot as the most dangerous place and therefore, turning back was no longer an option. The media felt intense pressure and thought to herself that he was incredibly stubborn and that she had to find a way to convince him no matter what. At that moment, a new person suddenly appeared and addressed the two of them, curiously asking if they were having trouble. The media looked toward him and was visibly shocked, calling him Loud-san, while he greeted her with a smile, saying it had been a long time since they last met. Liu asked the employee who this man was and she quickly introduced him, saying his name was Overpowered. The media explained that Loud was a very powerful individual ranked among adventurers. Liu was visibly surprised when he heard this, and he immediately recalled Adol's words about how the adventurers in the top ranks were all monsters in terms of strength. Liu felt that the person standing before him, Loud, was indeed one of those monsters Adol had spoken about. He started thinking to himself that if Loud was ranked, then he was just one step away from qualifying to go to the Island of the Gods. At that moment, Amelia smiled with great enthusiasm and told Loud that his timing was perfect, suddenly asking him for a favor. Then she shouted excitedly at Liu, asking him to face Loud and defeat him. The scene shifted to a dueling arena where Loud stood ready in front of Liu, apologizing for making him wait. Loud told him he hadn't expected to be challenged to a duel, so he had borrowed a weapon from someone else, noting that the weapon felt light and would work well for the fight. Liu introduced himself seriously and very formally, stating that his name was Liu Toli. Loud smiled and commented that there was no need for formal speech among adventurers. He could speak casually and comfortably. He added that he knew the employee well as she had updated his ranking in the past, and he praised her exceptional skills and competence as an agent. He explained that Amelia possessed vast knowledge, great passion, and meticulousness in her work, qualities that set her apart from other agents. He also mentioned that since the request was from such a diligent employee, he was willing to help however he could. Loud prepared for the fight and told Liu that Amelia had literally asked him to teach this stubborn beginner a lesson, adding with a smile that she seemed to care quite a bit about him. Liu stood ready to face Loud and immediately sensed just how powerful he was just by looking at him. A very strong aura of energy flowed from around Loud, making Liu feel that he'd be pierced by that spear-like force if he tried to attack carelessly. At that moment, the employee called out to Liu with great excitement, telling him that this was a perfect opportunity to realize how vast the world he lived in truly was. Liu remained silent for a moment, thinking to himself that if this was about testing the world scale, then he was definitely ready to take on the challenge. The area erupted with Liu's immense energy as it burst outward around him, and he declared aloud to himself that he already understood just how vast and powerful the world he was about to face truly was. Standing opposite one another were Liu Toli, ranked 27,281, and Overpowered, ranked 11, in a serious and decisive face-off as they prepared for their duel. The employee immediately began the match with great excitement, raising her hand and shouting loudly to announce the start. The two charged at each other at great speed, and their weapons clashed powerfully, generating a flurry of sparks and surges of energy from the fierce collision. Liu moved with incredible speed, delivering a powerful blow using his sword, now charged with prana energy, resulting in a devastating strike that astonished Loud. Loud was deeply surprised as he observed Liu's abilities. In his mind, he analyzed how Liu was channeling prana energy into both his sword and his shield during his attacks, and also noticed that he was using the energy to enhance his movement at an extraordinary level. He kept watching Liu's sword technique and, for a moment, thought it looked familiar, but he quickly dismissed the idea, insisting to himself that it couldn't possibly be the secret sword style of the Great Knight at all, a style that was only ever passed down to one individual per generation. While Loud was lost in thought, Liu seized the opportunity and moved in, declaring firmly that this was no time to be thinking during battle. They clashed again with tremendous force, and Loud seemed more relaxed this time as he calmly commented while Liu continued pressing him hard. The two exchanged a rapid series of consecutive attacks amid the noise and chaos of battle, and their strikes collided with such intensity that small explosions of energy erupted around them. Loud backed off slightly, staring at Liu's overwhelming energy, noting to himself that the amount of prana Liu possessed surpassed even his own, and that there was also a strange shimmer surrounding him. Loud directly asked Lu what his race was due to the strange energy he carried, and Lu looked visibly confused as he asked in surprise what he meant by the word race. Loud replied seriously that pretending not to know wouldn't help him and added that this kind of energy couldn't be acquired later in life. It was something a person had to be born with. When he realized Lu wasn't willing to talk, Loud indifferently announced that he would force him to reveal his abilities through combat and began preparing a powerful attack using his spear. He then asked Lu if he could use incantations, which confused Lu and made him wonder silently what that term even meant. Loud began chanting his own special incantation, and enormous energy began to rise around him as he recited a ritual phrase: "The wild stallion, mighty and free, crossing countless mountains, seeks a breath of wind." Tremendous energy exploded from around Loud, forming a massive golden aura that left Lu in visible shock as he watched the overwhelming display of power. Loud continued his powerful chant, reciting more of the ritual words, which caused a large number of glowing spears to appear around him. Readying for a massive attack, he looked at Lu and confidently told him that he'd better use his own incantation too, or he would undoubtedly die facing such immense power. Loud continued speaking with great seriousness, telling Lu that he would die if he didn't use his incantation now. The two stood in the battlefield surrounded by an intense energy that filled the area with tension and heavy anticipation. Loud looked toward Liu with intense focus, waiting for his opponent's reaction. Liu's face clearly showed signs of tension and worry as he observed the massive attack Loud was preparing to launch at him. Loud pointed his spear forcefully toward Liu as golden energy began to gather around him in preparation for the attack. A massive wave of energy erupted from him in the form of a dense barrage of radiant spears flying toward Liu, stunning him with the sheer power of the assault. Liu began moving at incredible speed, trying to dodge the raining spears that fell upon him with overwhelming force. Despite his efforts to evade the attack, it was clear that Liu was struggling greatly, and Loud calmly admitted that a regular sword could never block such an incantation. With a simple movement of his fingers, Loud activated even more spears, which launched toward Liu with immense speed and force. Liu continued his evasive maneuvers, using incredibly agile and rapid movements to dodge the relentless spears. After the attack ended, Liu stood catching his breath, slightly winded, though his expression showed deep concentration. Liu's mind drifted back to his training with his mentor, Adel, who had once told him that he was still weak in controlling prana. Adel had added that once Liu became accustomed to managing prana, he would gradually be able to use special techniques. At the time, Liu had asked in surprise what kind of techniques he would be able to use. Adel instructed him to watch carefully and told him he would begin by teaching him the simplest technique. Adel then demonstrated a basic technique called Lightning Blade in front of Liu, which displayed great power and dazzling speed. Liu decided to use that very same technique against Loud, releasing a massive surge of green prana energy that shot toward him at incredible speed. Loud was completely shocked by the speed and power of the technique Liu had unleashed and struggled greatly to block it. Despite Loud's efforts to defend, Liu continued to press forward with great force, engaging him at close range. At that point, Loud unleashed another extremely powerful incantation, summoning yet another enormous number of radiant spears around him. This resulted in another intense clash between the two, with their energy techniques colliding in a powerful explosion. Loud was astonished by the lightning-fast strike Liu had executed, which was nearly invisible to the naked eye. Even though the attack had been extremely fast, Loud quickly recovered and sensed the seriousness of the situation. He launched a very swift counterattack. Using his spear in a skillful move aimed at Liu, who was taken aback by Loud's incredible reaction speed and strength. As Loud's powerful and rapid assault continued, it culminated in a fierce collision that sent Liu crashing to the ground. Despite Liu's fall, Loud commented with admiration on the young fighter's performance, affirming that his strength was worthy of recognition. However, Loud added firmly while moving his fingers that despite Liu's efforts, the wall before him was still far too high. He then began his next attack, surrounding the entire area with golden energy spears, completely trapping Liu from all directions. Liu stood frozen in shock, unable to move, his face filled with astonishment and anticipation. At that moment, Loud addressed Liu with a sharp gaze, telling him never to underestimate the adventurer rankings. Without hesitation, Loud launched the golden spears toward Liu, who was unable to do anything to counter the devastating attack. A faint look of irritation appeared on Liu's face as if he wasn't fully satisfied about being forced into such a situation. The attack triggered a massive explosion that caused the arena floor to collapse, sending debris and dust flying everywhere. After the assault ended, Liu was seen lying unconscious in the middle of a large crater, clearly overwhelmed by the force of the attack. Loud looked down at his opponent who still lay motionless on the ground. The screen in the battle arena clearly announced the winner, Loud Blowoord, ranked among adventurers. After the match ended, Emidia smiled and asked Loud if he was satisfied. Loud gave a faint smile and replied that he was, and she thanked him for his help. She continued saying that now Liu better understood the reality of the situation, but Loud replied calmly that she was quite good at twisting words. Loud then looked at her thoughtfully and asked if she truly believed that Liu could have beaten him in the end. The media answered quietly that she had simply thought it was possible. Loud deduced that her belief came from the fact that Liu was a student of the Great Knight at all. She replied that she hadn't expected him to notice. Loud confirmed that he figured out Liu's identity the moment he saw his lightning-fast sword movement, a technique belonging to the secret sword style known as the Saint's Blade style. He began to speak aloud, questioning the situation, noting that the Saint's Blade style was considered the strongest of all and was usually passed down from generation to generation among knights only. Loud added with concern that for Liu to possess this technique while ranked as an adventurer rather than a knight could be seen as an insult to the knight class, as if something sacred had been stolen from their profession. The media suddenly shouted with great concern that she had to prevent Liu from meeting any knight rankers from now on, and Loud agreed, saying the matter could be dangerous for Liu's life. Loud suggested that the situation might be easier if Liu chose to register as a knight ranker instead, which might help avoid many problems. The media looked deeply concerned, clearly thinking it over without making any direct comment. She remembered how Liu had once told her calmly that there was something he had to do no matter the cost, even if it seemed impossible. She continued explaining that the true reason she believed in Liu's strength beyond just being a dull student was because Liu had told her he managed to land a successful hit on Adol himself. Loud was greatly surprised and responded with clear disbelief, saying it was impossible, especially considering Liu's current level of skill. The media agreed and said she thought the same, but added that Liu didn't seem like the type who would lie about such a thing. Loud appeared thoughtful and said to himself that while the Saint's Blade style had been a surprise, what caught his attention even more was the special shimmer of energy that Liu used, making him suspect there was a deeper secret behind it. Suddenly, a media turned to speak to Loud with interest, and Loud straightforwardly told her that Liu also possessed incantation techniques. He calmly admitted that if Liu had actually used those incantations during the fight, Loud might have lost the match, showing his deep respect for the young fighter's strength.